available. So for those who've attended the previous 3 sessions, I encourage everyone to participate, especially when I have a question on the screen, because it helps us, stimulate the conversation, and we benefit from each other's ideas. So I'm going to dive right in because I'm going to be very respectful of everybody's time, inshallah. Okay. So first question, what are employers looking for? Like when an employer is looking to hire somebody, what qualities do they want that employee to have?
Skills.
Okay, skills. What else?
Honesty, hard work.
Honesty and hard work. Excellent. What else?
Passionate.
Passionate. Okay, excellent. What else?
Communication.
Excellent. Communication.
Motivated.
Motivated. Okay, excellent. Troy?
Achievements.
I'm sorry?
Achievements.
Someone has said, yeah, history of achievement. Okay. Okay, we have about 15 more seconds for this question. Anybody else have anything? What do you think that employers want when they're looking to hire you? Think a little bit more if you are.
Relevant experience.
Okay, relevant experience. Very good.
Likability of that person. If that person's like, you see that person as a friend, you would want to hire him.
Excellent, excellent. Okay, I think that's my homeboy from Karachi. You know. Okay, very good. All right. What is a coward? Oh, and so this is going to be a very provocative talk. Okay, so intellectually provocative. So what is a coward? You can Google it, huh?
A person who does not who cannot confront situations.
Okay, can't confront situations. What else?
Person who's scared to try new things.
Okay, scared to try new things. Excellent. Excellent.
Afraid of danger. He's afraid. Someone afraid of danger or outcome.
Okay, afraid of danger. Okay, what else? This is important because this ties a lot into what we're going to talk about. Afraid of danger.
Does not take action when required.
I'm sorry? Arsalan, was that you? Huh?
Yeah, person who does not take action when required.
Okay, excellent. Doesn't take action when required. Okay, what else?
Someone who is able to take action and knows they should take action, but still does not take action.
Excellent. Okay, great. See, we have some intellectual heavyweights in the group. Excellent. Able to take, but doesn't take. Okay, but doesn't take. Okay.
Run away.
Question. Huh? I'm sorry?
Run away from the
Run
scene.
away. Okay, run away. Okay, now, so this was supposed to be a talk on career. So now what is an intellectual coward? An intellectual coward.
The one that he knows that he's able to do the action, but he doesn't do it, and he make all the excuses to himself. That is something right. What is he doing?
Okay, very good. Let's build on that now because this is very important, right? You know, I would like everybody to understand this term, intellectual coward, by the end of this talk. What else?
A yes man.
Yes man. Okay. Excellent.
Possibly has the ability to do the job, but chooses not to, whether it be out of fear or.
Yeah. Okay, that's very good. Specifically, think about intellect, right? What?
Possibly a hypocrite, like someone who stands, you know, for it, but really doesn't. I don't know. That's my thought on it.
Excellent. And who was that just spoke? Was that Sister Amina?
No, Sister Nadia. This is my first time joining in.
Oh, okay. Okay. Excellent. Yeah. So intellectual coward. We're going to go back to this. Anyone else have one final thought on this? Intellectual coward. Because the very last slide in the presentation comes back to this. Okay. Inshallah, let's move on then. Okay. So what is it?
I just want to add, like, would you consider somebody as an intellectual coward on the aspect that he can take actions, but he's not societal pressure from that standpoint?
No, that's definitely true. So I'm not talking specific circumstances. I'm just saying, what are the attributes or qualities? Sure. What actions do people who are intellectual cowards, what do they take, right? So the question here is, can somebody think about an intellectual coward in mainstream United States? I'll give you a hint. I'm thinking about a radio show host. Okay. I don't want to spend too much time on it. For example, Rush Limbaugh. He's an intellectual coward. He's been talking on the radio for 35 years. Has he ever gone onto a talk show on something that is not friendly, even a mainstream network like CBS or CNN, and had a Q&A? Never done it, at least in the last 30 years. But he's got an opinion about everything. How can you be a radio show host, be on the radio for almost 40 years, have an opinion about everything from race relations to the war in Iraq, to economic justice, to tax policy, to race relations, but you have never done an interview with any mainstream organization in 3 decades? That is the epitome of an intellectual coward. Now, someone like Ann Coulter, who's very provocative, and I'm mentioning these names because I'm sure everyone on this call has heard them. I will at least extend her the courtesy that she will go on a talk show, even one that like she'll go on Bill Maher and say, look, I'm supporting Trump. And I may disagree with her reasons, but you have to at least extend a certain amount of courtesy to somebody who's going into an environment and walking to a situation and dealing with a host that she may disagree with, and she's going toe-to-toe with them. So an intellectual coward is always also somebody who has an opinion about matters, but never puts themselves in a situation where they might be challenged. Okay, so now, what is a productive citizen? What is a productive citizen? We've asked this question, I think, we asked this question in session 2, I think. What is a productive citizen?
A person who contributes to the society.
Okay, contributes to society, excellent. What else? Any other ideas? What makes you a productive citizen?
I think you feel responsible about what is going around yourself, not just from a community standpoint, but an overall world standpoint.
Excellent, excellent. Okay, someone else was also speaking. Very good, Mohsen. Any other ideas?
Someone who shares knowledge, contributes to the society in multiple ways.
Excellent. Okay, what else?
If it's using the word citizen, then I take it to be addressing your role in society and how society is governing itself. And so therefore, if you're productive, you are participating in governance.
Excellent, excellent. So, yeah, and when I meant by citizen, I didn't mean American citizen. If you're a green card holder, you can, in the context of this, you're a productive citizen. So, because the current marketing scheme for about 100 years has been specifically designed to not have citizens, to have consumers. Okay, that's a whole nother discussion. It's 100 years old. The godfather of this is Edward Barnay. But the point is, you want a society in which you have consumers, but not necessarily citizens. Okay, so if we want to serve humanity, one of the things that we can do is make sure our children are productive citizens and those that were close to are productive citizens. Like when I asked this question in session 2, the first one was pay taxes, right? So, and that's fair. We live here, we have a collective responsibility to finance a society and to pay our taxes. So now, We'll move on. These are the 6 examples I had given in the very first session. I had said these are the careers, and these are the names, and these are the careers of people who have made enormous contribution to humanity and even to the religion. And they're not in the traditional role of, let's just say, politicians or scholars. For we talked about how Muhammad Ali had an enormous impact on not just being an athlete, on being an activist, right? And raising the consciousness of things. We talked about Fazl Rahman, the engineer, the architect, how he designed the Willis Tower. We talked about Muhammad Yunus, the banker, the founder of Grameen Bank, and the person who basically challenged 5 centuries of the Western banking system and said, no, there's another alternative, and you can actually lend to people without collateral, microfinance. We talked about M.M. Alim, the pilot, who holds the world record in kills in Air Force combat in a dogfight. He had 6 kills in 60 seconds. It's still the world record in Air Force combat. We talked about El General, the rapper from Tunisia. There's a couple of historical sites that have said the most influential hip hop song in history has actually been in Arabic out of Tunisia. That song helped mobilize a population to overthrow a dictator. And we talked about A.Q. Khan, the physicist and scientist who is the father of Pakistan's nuclear bomb. And the reason we just mentioned these 6 is they're not in the traditional role of that we would think of people who have necessarily, on this list, for example, I don't have Allama Iqbal, rahmatullah alayhi. So what is the purpose of education? Now, this is where we've done some preliminary remarks, and everybody, I think, on this call who's old enough has children. So what is the purpose of education?
To
make
Benefit
some
yourself.
citizen.
I'm sorry?
I think to bring about a productive children.
Excellent, excellent, Brother Korea. Productive citizen. Okay, what else? Let's spend 2 minutes on this.
Benefit yourself, benefit the society.
Excellent. Benefit self and society. Okay, what
to
else?
gain knowledge, pass it on to your future generation, and make wiser decisions in terms of everything, lifestyle and speech, everything.
Excellent, excellent. Very good. Gain knowledge. What else?
Develop, critical thinking skills and ability to develop one's inborn talents.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Professor David. Critical thinking and okay, what else? What else is the purpose of education?
To get closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala.
Fantastic. So as we become more educated, we learn more about different topics, and that should bring us closer to Allah. The first, I think we did this in session 2 and 3. The first word revealed to the Prophet in Mount Hira is Iqra. And we know the Prophet was Ummi'in.
It is also a way to Jannah.
Exactly. The knowledge way to Jannah. Okay. What else is the purpose of education?
It's unite people.
Huh?
Unite people, bring people close to each other.
Excellent, Mohsen. Okay. See, this is very encouraging. You see, people are from different backgrounds and that, like even this idea, if you can create intellectual consensus, you're going to be able to unite people. So what else? Any other ideas? What else is the purpose of education?
I think it helps decipher between fact and opinion.
Okay. Very good. Fact and opinion. Okay. It helps you decipher. That is very good. Very good. The difference between a fact and opinion.
I think in the corporate world, it's proof that you're somebody that can learn, that's worth being invested in. Once you get in the corporate world, the stuff you learn in school, you hardly use 10 or 15% of the material. So education, the degree is a proof that you are somebody that can learn and worth investing in.
Very good. Exactly. So basically, in a corporate way, the question is really what you're saying is, are you coachable? Are you coachable?
To learn how to work with others, especially other people different from yourself?
Excellent.
To build a strong community and stand up for your rights.
Okay, strong community. You know, this group could actually write a book.
MashaAllah.
You know, and no, this is, alhamdulillah, mashallah, really, really encouraging. So this is the basic goal of learning. Skill set to make an income, 2 learning, and 3 social tools. Very fundamental level, and you've said this, right? Fundamentally, we learn the ABCs, we do this so that we can put food on the table. Now, that's whether being an accountant, that's whether being an economics person, that's whether you decide to become a teacher, that's whether you decide to become a surgeon. One is, let's be honest, we educate ourselves to be able to generate income for ourselves and our families. 2 is to learn, and 3 is develop social tools. And it was mentioned here, like uniting people, you know, working with others, strong community, you know, to benefit yourself and others. These are all social tools. And that's the purpose of informative education. A lot of the top 3 are the purposes of informative education. Now, what we want to emphasize is transformative education. And transformative education is you go through a process and you change your outlook. For example, like this thing of Black Lives Matter, to a large extent, people from Southeast Asia, this has been a non-issue for them. They came in 1974, 75. They've been living a certain lifestyle, and for them, what was going on in the South Side of Chicago or the hood or inner city of Newark and Brooklyn was something in a far off, basically distant land. Now, as they become informed, there are people who are now taking this seriously, and it is changing their outlook that the civil rights era is not over. The law may have changed, but the reality on the ground still needs effort. Now, for a lot of people, that's new information, right? And it's actually a brand new outlook, because in theory, legally, we're all equal. Now, I have a couple of traffic violations. It's only when I'm speeding. I don't have a lot, but the 3-4 times I have been stopped, the police officer says, "Oh, okay, you have a good driving record, go ahead." I've never sweat. One time I even had my insurance card in the trunk of the car. And I said, "Oh, it's in the trunk of the car." I didn't even ask him if I could get out. I just got out and took it out of the trunk of the car. It was in my briefcase. And I didn't even think about, well, I'm getting out of the trunk, getting out of the car without asking the police officer for permission. Maybe he's going to shoot me. I've never had that concern. So what we want to emphasize is transformative education. And 1, 2, 3, 4. So of the group listed 11 things. Now, if we spend another half hour just on this question, the group is going to list another 20, 30 things. And think for yourself, because we are under a time constraint, but I would encourage everyone to think on the call, because we're right at the midway point, of the items listed, which ones are informative, which means they belong in this top category, which ones are transformative, which means they belong on the bottom category, and they're not mutually exclusive, right? They're not mutually exclusive, but we want to talk about transformative education. Okay, so education. Generally, what do we do? Well, we want to, and I say we, I mean we as Muslims who are a little conscious and we are concerned about our situation in community. I'm not talking necessarily a scholar. Generally, what do? We want to read we'll read 1 to 3 books on a topic, and we feel we have enough knowledge about it. But if you really want to master a topic, you need to read 10 to 40 books on that topic. And a big part of it is get novel experiences in life, not just the book knowledge. And we'll talk about this, inshallah, as we move on. So what is lacking in our community specifically when it comes to education? And here we're talking about the Muslims who are living in the West and traditionally the societies that we come from. What is lacking? So now we've defined transformative education versus informative education. So what is lacking in our community educationally?
The ability to conform to change, to reassess your thought process and make change within your thought process or decision, getting away from the cultural influences.
Okay, fair enough, definitely, because that's it. That's an educational process. Conform to the environment that you're in, right? We're not in the Abu or culture. It's just a reality, right? That doesn't mean we don't respect our parents, you know? Rebel against your parents, you have a free one-way ticket to the hellfire. It's not what we're talking about, okay?
I think I think people are lacking a little bit of empathy from an intellectual standpoint too. Like if somebody is better off from an intellectual perspective, or somebody who is raising up their kids better than other people, are kind of like not empathizing on the fact that they have raised their kids better probably. And the cultural differences aside and everything, but within our community, I feel like people feel offended from that aspect, that if somebody is raising better kids.
Excellent, excellent. Yes, empathy, you know, and I think this was our second session or third. I said, how do you truly understand a society? And you know, we spent 5 minutes on that slide, and the basic argument I was driving is you don't truly understand a society unless you understand the underprivileged people and the disadvantaged people in that society. And that's one of the reasons that the Prophet ﷺ was so great. Why did he marry the widow and the divorcee? Why did he? Because he understood they were the underprivileged, they were the outcasts. Why did he say that the orphan and me will be, the person who takes care of the orphan and me will be like this on the day of judgment? He empathized with the orphan, who were also the outcasts of the society. So when I know that I have at this age, I don't really have fear of police officers. I'm extremely privileged in this society.
I'm sorry, I thought he was saying that we should empathize with people who are raising their kids better. It should be the other way around. The parents who are raising their kids better maybe want to share those skills and with the parents who aren't able to, raise their kids well.
Yeah, no, I think, okay, so we would probably have to do an entire series on parenting. But I think what Mohsen is talking about is arguably, okay, I will say this, arguably the strongest emotion in the Muslim world and among Muslims is probably jealousy.
Yeah, I don't deal with that too much, but thank God.
So, exactly.
Yeah, that's what I exactly mean, Asad. Like the jealousy factor is, I think that is too much within our community, because that's kind of like derives every other emotion and the intelligence of the people too. So
yeah, so
that's one part of it.
Exactly. Okay, so
could I attempt to answer that question? Because I think where you took it maybe to the correct place, but what I've seen in terms of what's lacking in our community educationally, it's the diversity of thought. Even just as a Muslim born in America, going to different mosques, I see either the mosque that reflects the back home of one area or the mosque that reflects the back home of another area, right? But I don't see a lot of genuinely American ones that have diversity of thought in whatever the institution sort of things that go on in there. So I think if we can just get there, we can go very far.
I agree. Everyone thinks they're better or they're more right than the other. And it shouldn't be like that, because then you're kind of, separating from your own Muslim brothers and sisters. And that's not the purpose of Islam. It's to unite each other.
But also to connect you to the people, the children that you're raising in the land that they're going to be living in. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
We still haven't gotten there. And I think educationally, that's that diversity of thought. And I'm not even saying diversity, diversity of thought obviously comes from different ethnic groups and racial groups, but it's just that just starting with diversity of thought, I think will get us so far. And then we can have those lofty goals in our community, whether it's, centers, mosques, churches, all those things. Anyway.
Exactly.
One point.
Yeah, sorry. Yes, go ahead, Ursulan.
Yeah, one point that you can't be sitting in isolation and be thinking about diversity of thought. You need to interact with people, build empathy, build all of these things. Ability to listen more to the other side and to people that are different from you, and that's how you build. But we tend to stick close to, I would say, I tend to meet more people that look like me, and I don't interact with other types of people as much as I should. So reflection on myself, that's how you build. When you meet diverse people, that's how you build diverse thinking. That's how you understand their point of view, which we're not doing as much as we should.
Excellent.
I agree.
Okay, so excellent. So I'll just make one comment, and I don't mean to be facetious. It's like if you were to put on a blindfold to go inside the masjid, just the aroma in the masjid will tell you who the majority congregants are in that masjid. I can put on a thing and I can say, you know what, am I in Faisalabad or am I in Cairo? And I'm not saying I have a very strong nose. Okay? I don't need to look at the calligraphy, just the aroma and the odor in the masjid will tell me if I'm in Faisalabad or if I'm in Cairo. So if that's the case, and it is that simple, I don't want to overemphasize it. When we go in, well, I should overemphasize it because we've so self-destructed. But this is something that's important. So let's go on here. So when we talk about education, now this is where if you aren't taking notes and you have young children, it's important. If from grade school through high school, focus on math and sciences because they help develop clarity of thinking for your children. Okay. Number two, this is very key. I put it in red, read biographies. Encourage your child to read every biography that he can about famous people in the school library. Because it's a lot easier to read biographies because usually the biography starts with the person's childhood. It doesn't have to be an autobiography. But when you read biographies, you learn the conditions a person grew up in, the historical epoch, and how they became, whatever struggles they had, because all biographies are about the adversity that they faced, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So especially when your child is in like 4th, 5th, 6th grade, a very low-hanging fruit is just get them to read biographies of all different people.
That's wise.
Okay. So historical movies and documentaries. Okay. Another big thing, this is important, study languages. You have to target proficiency in 3 or 4. And we will go back to intellectual coward. So those of us, say, from the South Asian, obviously our language could be English, Urdu. And if you are serious, you can learn another language just in middle school and high school. And this has to be a conscious decision. And not that you are conversational. No. You should at least be able to say, okay, if I do this right, my child should be able to at least read basic Urdu literature. And for people of Arab descent, not conversational in Arabic, we're talking Mus'haf Arabic. And we'll talk about why. So this is very important. The languages, the reading of biographies and historical movies. So I just gave some examples here. When we talk about empathy, you can't empathize with people you know nothing about them. So I gave a very cross section of movies, like a Malcolm X's Spike Lee. Invictus is about Nelson Mandela and the 1994 Rugby World Cup, Morgan Freeman movie. How he unites the country behind the Rugby World Cup. Cry Freedom is the story of Stephen Biko, who was killed in 1977 in a South African prison. Miracle, this is a Disney movie on the 1980 Olympic World Hockey team. probably the biggest upset in the history of sports, at least if not the one of the biggest. We all know roots going back to the slavery in Kunta Kinte. Defiance, a 2008 movie, is about Jews, two brothers, who set up a camp in Eastern Europe in the forest to fight against the Nazis. And they basically make a mini city. Very important how they were able to self-organize in the middle of World War II, living in a forest in Eastern Europe. It's these 55 days of Peking. This is when they're non-colonial powers deciding how they're going to butcher China. And they're 55 days before the reinforcements come. Okay? There Will Be Blood is a true story about the oil industry going back about 100 years. Little House on the Prairie, that's the only one I put here that is not completely historical, but it's a story of how the West was settled. El Cid is a story of arguably, there are two great knights in Western folklore. Richard the Lionheart, the one who fought the Crusades, and El Cid, who helped evict the Muslims out of Spain. Charlton Heston. And I will go back to El Cid as we move on. And I think everyone on this call has heard of Artugal Resurrection. Okay, the father of the Uthman, who founded the Ottoman dynasty. But again, this goes back to what we were talking earlier. It has to be a cross section of movies from different time and different eras, from different people's struggles, different ethnicities, and different intellectual traditions. You cannot be one-dimensional, especially when you live in a multicultural society. So this is very easy. A 10, 11-year-old kid will sit there and he will watch the miracle of the Olympic hockey team, and how for 4 straight Olympics, the Russians had just won the gold medal, and how this team was able to overcome that. What were the group dynamics? How were they trained? They didn't just come and it wasn't a freak goal that they won the Olympic gold medal. So figure out a way, especially when your child is 9, 10, 11, to teach them through movies. And they will learn content analysis when they see certain scenes. Okay. Next, when you move to college, it should just be assumed your child is going to do a double major. Now, this is a suggestion, and I feel extremely strongly about this. And again, I'm not telling anyone what to do. This is my experience of having worked in 12 different industries and having worked in both developed and emerging markets. Number one, you focus on a career. Whatever you decide. Number two, you have to choose a field that focuses on thinking and analytical skills. And again, they don't necessarily need to be mutually exclusive, and we'll talk about this. You must take an additional coursework on writing skills and creative writing. I know Wheaton North has an excellent program on creative writing. Excellent. And if you can write well, you'll be able to speak and present better. You may not be Malcolm X, but you can express your thought with clarity. And we as a community, especially the South Asians, since we're so obsessed with medicine, we don't think of some of these things. But you should be having this discussion. I would encourage everyone to have this discussion starting when your child is in 9th, 10th grade, and when you go to college, double major. Okay. And when you do the double major, the second class, assuming you go into accounting, economics, it should be either in philosophy, sociology, political science, or history. That is how you will develop your thinking and analytical skills. If you have a degree in philosophy or sociology or political science, you're going to understand the Black Lives Matter much better. So even when you're writing a business plan, your business plan is going to be better written, more logically thought out, because you're just not going to be focused on the numbers. One of these four. Now, again, everyone's situation is different. Everyone doesn't have the time nor the resources to do a double major. But I would highly encourage everyone, because if you have a plan, it might be only one, a couple of semesters in the summer with a couple of extra classes, right? Because the gen ed, they call general education credits, can fill both degrees. But if you have a plan, this is very doable. This is not like, okay, to get a double major, you're to get a double major, you have a 6-year plan. No, you can do a double major in 4.5 years, maybe 1 extra semester, but it goes into planning. Especially if you choose the physical sciences, this is a must. Because in the physical sciences, you're taught 2 + 2 is 4. You're looking for the hard data, which is important, right? But to enhance your thinking and analytical skills, it's one of these 4. It's a must. Okay. 6 attributes to become a scholar. Number 1, modicum of intellect. Number 2, passion and drive. Number 3, patience. Number 4, your basic necessities have to be met. Number 5, a good teacher. Number 6, a long time. Who taught us this? Imam Shafi rahmatullah alayhi taught us this 1,000 years ago. He didn't say you to be brilliant. Imam Shafi rahmatullah alayhi taught us this 1,000 years ago, and this still applies today. And it doesn't just apply in the realm of, say, being a religious scholar. If you want to be a subject matter expert, these are the things that you need. These are the attributes you must have. No child should be filling out a college application in our community without having a fundamental understanding of this. Because this has been proven with 1,000 years of history, this conceptual framework. Modicum of intellect, passion and drive, patience, your basic necessities met, a good teacher, and a long time. You can't be a subject matter expert or a scholar if you don't have a good teacher. If you're worried about trying to pay your rent all the time, it's very hard to be a scholar. And this framework I've given, even in the corporate quarters of America, no one has said, you know what, no, to be a subject matter expert, you don't need anyone to teach you. You can do it in 6 months. You don't need to be passionate. Nobody can dispute these 6. So if you're going to take a picture of this slide and the one on the coursework. Okay, scholarship. Now we're going to talk for a couple of minutes just on scholarship. This goes without saying, you need to know English and Arabic if you want to be a scholar to work for the religion. No ifs, ands, or buts. We know the obvious reasons. English is actually the medium of instruction in the world, and business and Arabic for obvious reasons. But this is not enough. You need to learn either Urdu or Farsi, and you need to learn another European language. Urdu or Farsi in the last 400 or 500 years, most of the literature has been in one of those languages. And a European language and some PhD programs, they won't even accept your application unless you can pass an exam in a European language. Now we're talking for the next generation of thinkers. So if your child is 11, 12, and you want to try to orient him in this, he's got to master English, he's got to master Arabic, or she. In the last couple of centuries, most of the literature has been either Urdu, Farsi. Now there is an argument about Ottoman Turkish, which is outside the domain of this talk. And we have to think about German and these other languages. Because they've had centuries of history of dealing with the Muslim world and colonialism, not just English. You have to be able to read Nietzsche. You have to be able to read these other thinkers, modernist thinkers, in another European language. So Aslam, I think you have your hand up.
Yeah, there's a lot of background noise. Sound like we're traveling, but I was curious about Chinese not being on the list.
Okay, it's coming in very garbled, so I'm not able to hear you. So is it okay? Hello? So this Chinese. Okay, Mandarin. No, Mandarin is very important also. Now, for example, when I was speaking to some of my mentees in Australia, I said Mandarin. learn Mandarin. Because they're in Australia, they're Australian citizens, where they're geographically located, etc. Like even Pakistan, some of the top schools are now beginning to teach Mandarin, Chinese. That's very good for business reasons, etc., right? But we're talking specifically being able to engage fully in different capacities with our intellectual tradition. And again, this may seem like, but look, if your child is growing up here, they know English. If you are in an Arab household, you know Arabic. If not, you're in a Desi household, generally you can speak Urdu or Farsi. And you can learn another European language just through high school. But it takes concerted effort, right? It just can't be, I need to get an A. No, I need to master this European language because I'm trying to set myself up for the future. Okay, so again, we talked about the degree focused on critical thinking skills, philosophy, sociology, political science, and history. And I think I'm hitting my time. And today was the only time I asked for a little a window. So I only have an undergraduate degree. And this is not false humility. But I want to say this. For example, one of the best class, I think arguably the best class I took in the last semester of my college education. I could only fit it in the schedule. It was called History of Hispanic Civilization. And I thought about Chinese civilization, I thought about Indian civilization, but Hispanic civilization. And I took this class, and Professor Languana Diaz, I still remember his name, excellent. He spent the whole semester talking about Muslim Spain. And then when it came time to do a term paper, I said, okay, Professor Diaz, what should I do my term paper on? And you know what his question was? Because I participated in the class, and he said, what languages can you speak? I said, English. He said, what languages can you read? I said, English. And he kind of looked at me and he kind of smirked. He said, you're a smart guy, but there are not too many resources that I can tell you if only thing you can do. Only language you can do research is in English. And this is undergraduate. But anyway, then he gave me this topic. He said, do a term paper on the Crusades against Al-Azraq. Now, this is my thesis on this term paper. It goes back almost 30 years. That certain elements within the church saw the ejection of Muslims of Spain as much of a religious obligation as taking back the Holy Land, taking back Jerusalem. That was my thesis. And it so broadened my worldview and my understanding. They did not just see it as a political issue. They saw it as a religious obligation to evict the Muslims of Spain. That was my thesis. And that's why I say these degrees in history and philosophy and sociology, they will really, inshallah, expand your child's mind. Like this one on, I minored in political science. I did a term paper on the anybody know what happened in 9/11/1973? Anybody know on this call? 9/11/1973, what happened? Okay, 9/11/1973, the coup happened in Chile. El Salvador Allende was overthrown. Henry Kissinger was Secretary of State. And every single strategy used in 1973 in Chile was used in 1954, Operation Ajax, the overthrow of Mossadegh in Iran. So one reason that we are not effective at formulating responses is we don't extend the courtesy to those who come before us. For the most part, foreign policy by the United States has been the same in Latin America as it has been in the Middle East. Torrijos was mysteriously died in Panama, over the Panama Canal. There was not oil, but there was the Panama Canal. Arbenz was, I think, in Guatemala. Allende was in Chile. This is just not something reserved exclusively, in theory, for the Middle East or the Muslim world. And since we haven't made the effort to learn about the sacrifices and struggles of others, that's one reason we can't formulate effective responses. So this is why this double major, it's a necessity. It's not something that you can possibly do. Okay. I am under a constraint. I have to move on. Okay, so scholarship. You must encourage your child to have odd jobs. You are not doing your child any favors by saying, just get all A's and don't worry about anything. No. They need to learn how to bag groceries. They need to know how to deal with difficult people at the cash register. They need to learn those social skills. They need to learn responsibility. And they need to be able to, when they're 17 years old, take the car to the mechanic and it says it's $30 for an oil change and they end up with a bill of $55 and they're like, what happened? They need to learn these skills. Cross-cultural capacity. This has always been important in the history of the Ummah from the first generation, especially those of us who are we live in a multicultural society. This is extremely important, not just because of the unfortunate events of what happened with Mr. Floyd. You have to develop the skill to communicate with different levels and different groups and speak often about your mentors and your teachers. I was taught by a lot of people. That's why I might be able to make a point on the thing. Okay, key point. So where we're closing. I've deliberately used a term in a military contract. I'm expressing this in a military manner. Intellectual warrior. We need intellectual warriors. We need people with an intellectual arsenal, with a mental armory, with mental capacity. Intellectual warrior. Mention this to your child over and over and over. Intellectual warrior, because this competition has two dimensions. Number one, spirituality, and two, it's a war of ideas. And it is a war. We must produce intellectual warriors. For whatever reason, it might be too late in my life for me to do this. But I have to very consciously put my child in that position. He can read and write Urdu. He can read and write English. He's taking a European language at work. I'm making sure that they're reading history. I'm making sure that these are things that we need to do. We must produce intellectual warriors. Unless you can compete in the marketplace of ideas, what you have to offer society is of marginal value. WhatsApp is not activism. I'm sorry. Okay. I'll close here. These are the key points. Session one, we said historically our community looks for stability. That's what decides our career choice. Two, to serve the religion or humanity, you don't need to be a scholar. You can serve the humanity by being an athlete like Muhammad Ali and taking a stand against the Vietnam War. Historically, our community is focused on the physical sciences, and think consciously, irrespective of what field you're in. We talked about this in session 3, of whatever field I'm in, whatever I'm doing to make a living, how can I deploy that skill set to humanity? Session number 2, the key points were the importance of humanity versus physical sciences, critical thinking, satisfaction, achievement, choose a career that you're spiritually fulfilled. We talked in a little bit of detail about good versus great. We said, look, it's very important if you want to develop an intellectual arsenal to know a little bit about a lot of things. And you have to very consciously develop a holistic view and understanding. And the analogy we used was the forest through the trees. And most importantly, do your part. Don't always look for the imam or the scholar to solve all of your problems. You can go to them for advice, but the question you have is, okay, what are you doing to set up the next generation to make a meaningful contribution to humanity? That's primarily your responsibility. It's not the imams, it's not the president of the board. It is your responsibility as a parent to prepare your child to serve humanity. Now, of course, you draw on the organizations and the imams and the scholars. Of course, you draw on the expertise, but it's primarily your responsibility. In session 3, we had 4 main things. 1 is enhance your critical thinking. How do you do that? 2, consider non-traditional fields, not in your community. We talked at length about the importance of interpretation. People are seeing events, and unless you have critical thinking, you're not going to be able to interpret those events in a meaningful way. You'll just see chaos. And a real executive, I learned this in my corporate career, where other people see complexity, a real executive sees patterns. A real executive, even in corporate America, where other people see complexity, a real executive sees patterns. And this is where our spiritual metabolism and intellectual arsenal helps us to interpret events through a certain healthy prism. And you have to find a mentor. I make sure I talk to at least a couple of my mentors every 2-3 months, even at this age. You have to find a mentor. You cannot say that you're going to serve humanity, and if I ask you who your mentors are, you can't mention anybody. These are the key points for today. Number one, cross-cultural capacity. And this slide deck I had done before. Unfortunately, Mr. Floyd was killed, but cross-cultural capacity. The importance of foreign languages. Like my presentation on social dislocation, I wrote that when I was thinking in Punjabi. I was not thinking in English. Because even being able to think in different languages enhances your capacity to analyze and critique. We talked about the importance of humanities. And again, lastly, think outside the box, both for your career and your life. Don't limit yourself with tunnel vision. This is the purpose of our existence. Number one, to worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Number two, service. Of course, to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, but you do it through humanity, through animal, plants, and the water and the earth. Okay, inshallah, I think I've hit my time. So I thank you for your attention. And if I've said anything wrong, I ask that you forgive me.